Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome back if you've seen one of our wonderful lives before. I hope everyone's having a great day. And today we're just going to talk a lot about panic disorder, panic attacks, intense anxiety experiences. And hopefully by the end of this time today, we will be able to walk away with some more knowledge around panic attacks and how to have some tips to best manage them and really hopefully have that opportunity to decrease the intensity and frequency of those types of experiences. I see everyone coming into the chat already. Welcome. Hello. Please feel free to ask questions as we go along. Hi, Shelly. I see that you unfortunately had a panic attack on Monday. I'm so sorry to hear that. Hopefully you made it out okay. It sounds like that was a really tough experience. So feel free, Shelly, to ask some questions and suggestions. I'd be more than happy to give you some ideas today. We just really want to make a welcoming community here today. So feel free, again, ask any questions, make any comments, and just feel free to participate. So I wanted to first, before getting into some tips and best ways to manage panic attacks, I did want to kind of talk about what they are so that we have a clear understanding of what a panic attack is, what a clear understanding of what panic disorder is, and also just what anxiety is in contrast to panic attacks and panic disorder. So as always, back to our little bit of our staple for diagnostics, if we go to the DSM, if we look at what a panic attack is, there is this abrupt surge of intense fear or intense discomfort that reaches a peak within minutes and lasts, and during which time 4 or more of the following symptoms occur. So it's that quick onset usually of intense fear that happens. And so usually then in that fear response in our nervous system, we end up having some heart palpitations or maybe a pounding heart or accelerated heart rate. So if you were to notice your pulse, it probably would have increased. Maybe some more sweating, right? So your body's really prepared for that fight flight response, maybe some trembling, some shaking, sensations of shortness of breath, or maybe as though you can't breathe, the smothering, maybe feelings of choking, chest pain and discomfort, nausea, abdominal distress, feeling dizzy, unsteady, lightheaded, faint. So again, you're not really maybe having that symptomology or enough blood to the brain. So it's really low blood pressure happening. Some derealization, and that is when the experience of things around you don't feel as concrete and real. So sometimes we could describe that as when you play a video game, the video game isn't real, but it's feels real, but not quite. It's kind of that in between space. Fear of losing control or going you're going crazy or something, that really unsettling experience and not being able to kind of know what from what. And sometimes there's that fear of dying as well, even though in that moment you are not going to die, but it's the intense fear of dying. And then also sometimes there's maybe some numbness or tingling sensations, chills or hot flashes or hot flushes. So all of those symptoms, you would ideally need to have at least 4 or more of those symptoms to be able to have a diagnosable panic attack. I see, Shelly, in the chat that you said it was ironic that I saw this talk come up this afternoon just in time. Yeah, I think maybe it was meant to be that we were able to connect today. So feel free, Shelly, to ask any questions, and hopefully this can give you some guidance. And if you feel open to sharing more about your experience for everyone to learn from, I'd be happy to talk about that if you are, so feel free. But the reason I wanted to talk about the panic attack and what that is that often when we have intense anxiety, we can have all of those symptoms that I listed. And so the key is having 4 or more and having it really peak up quickly for you. And that would be that categorization. So an intense anxiety experience can feel very similar to a panic attack. And I think just in the way that we grammatically speak about things and describe things, we might use the word panic attack, but it might not fully be all of those 4 or more of those symptoms. And so I just wanted to clarify that. And I'm not just clarifying for grammar's sake or diagnostics sake. I'm actually helping you guys to clarify your own experience, is because if you can identify if you're having a panic attack or just an intense anxiety experience, sometimes it's then easier to distinguish what are the best strategies for you to use. Awareness, knowledge is power. So yeah, definitely try and have a bit of an idea if you're having just an intense anxiety experience or the panic attack. And also there is something to mention versus multiple panic attacks can result into panic disorder. And so you would have to have repetitive panic attacks to go into that panic disorder space. Versus general anxiety disorder is similar because we can have those intense anxiety experiences, but we would have that excessive anxiety and worry and fear, and maybe have some apprehension or some heightened expectations of things, and occurring for more days than not for at least 6 months for it to be classified as like the general anxiety disorder. So it has to be going on for at least like that 6-month period. And sometimes if you are experiencing general anxiety disorder, you would find it very difficult to control the worries that you would have, or the anxiety and worry are associated with 3 or more of the following 6 symptoms. So for example, you would have restlessness or feeling keyed up or on edge. You would be easily fatigued, difficulty concentrating, or your mind going blank, some irritability, maybe some muscle tension or sleep disturbance. So you would want to have at least 3 of those symptoms for a prolonged period of at least 6 months to have that general anxiety disorder diagnosis. And also the focus of worry and fear in general anxiety disorder is not confined to any other thing. So it would not be about a fear of having panic attacks, because that would be more on the panic attacks or panic disorder symptomology and diagnosis. And it wouldn't be about obsessions of things, or it wouldn't be on phobias. It would just be a general fear and worry about things overall. Shelley, I see so that you have some comments here that you were sharing that unfortunately your bank account was hacked and you have some teenager drama, and then some grief and loss happening here. And I'm really sorry to hear that. That sounds like so many things are happening at one time. And I think that really speaks to that as human beings, we can only tolerate so much naturally. And so you said that you're feeling a lot of those feelings that I was mentioning, those symptoms, and it sounds like you had like some people able to support you at the bank, which is really good, and that you had a really tight chest and you couldn't breathe. Yeah. And I just want to express some empathy for you, because that's like such an uncomfortable situation. I've been in moments where I've had intense anxiety and fear, and it's just so uncomfortable. I really would encourage you to see if some of these tips today are helpful. Maybe if you're open, consider reaching out in North Colorado for maybe some counseling. Obviously, I'm very biased, but I think it's really wonderful to have like that therapeutic rapport that someone can really focus and tailor some support to you. But I want you to know that like this experience doesn't have to go on forever. I think that gets lost a lot of the times, is that even if we are experiencing a lot of discomfort and it feels so alone, I want you to know that you're not alone in that experience. And there is definitely a way forward to a more positive experience. So I'm thinking for you. Yeah. And I'm not sure what IoT is, Shelley, but yeah, for sure. I'm glad that you have a great therapist and that you're moving forward, and we all wish the best for you on that. And so feel free to ask questions today about some of the tips that I have and see if you can try some of them out for sure. Sammy, hi. Nice to see you. Carson as well. Carson is sharing that they have an anxiety disorder and they're starting medication. For sure, medication can be an option that is possibly worth pursuing as well. And Sammy is saying that they recently were in the ER for a major panic attack, and I seriously thought I was dying. It was awful. Yeah, it sounds like you really had that symptom of the fear of dying because of the intense symptomology in your body that you're having. It's actually quite common for individuals to go to the ER because of such intense body symptoms that we're having that really mimic and manifest as other physiological concerns. So that is really normal for that to come as an outcome. Hopefully you were able to recover from that and you're able to move forward, for sure. And yeah, Carson, I really appreciate you offering some empathy to Shelley as well. And yeah, I really appreciate you guys like giving some support to each other, because I think the more that we offer community and companionship and empathy and compassion to one another, I think that's really wonderful. So keep on moving forward, guys. And hopefully some of these things today we're going to talk about are going to be helpful for you guys. So just expressing some empathy to you guys all over. Yeah, so if we kind of go back to some of these ideas here, I did want to keep in mind that it's important to also acknowledge the difference between like anxiety and stress as well. So stress is that intense pressure we feel in response to a stressor, versus anxiety is in response to a stressor, but it has that fear associated with it. So I always like to ask clients, what are we fearing? What are we worried about? What is like the outcome that we're really trying to avoid? And if we can identify the fear, then we can move into some problem solving approaches around that fear. So for example, I'll just give a really basic example. Maybe we're feeling anxious about a test. If we're anxious about the test, we can go, the fear is not doing well in the test. So then the problem solving approach would be like, we can try and study, get a tutor, ask for extra help, maybe an extension, things like that. But then we could also do some symptomology practices of like really grounding yourself in the present moment, that the test isn't out happening right now. Versus stress might be is like knowing that the test is coming and you feel like you don't have enough time to study. So it's like that pressure of time or confinement and desire to do really well. So Mom Hut says, how do we deal with restlessness and the tension and the alarming feeling, the feeling of being on edge? Well, I think number one, we have to recognize that we have to have some acceptance of the symptomology. And you're probably going to hate me for that idea because it's so uncomfortable. But the more that we force ourselves away from feeling our feelings and getting in tune with ourselves, the more that we're going to not be able to hold space for our feelings. And we're going to be able to we're just going to escalate more and more in that. So all about fear and restlessness and being on edge. It's all about coming back into a place of calm, that state of hyperarousal, back into that state of calm, into our window of tolerance. So everyone, I want you to kind of put your thinking hats on and ask yourself, what's something soothing for me? What's something calming for me? And if you guys have some things, feel free to share them in the chat. So an example might be like really slow, deep breaths, stuff like that might be really helpful. Or like being grounded. So for example, for me, if I want to be grounded, I want to really tune into my senses. So my senses of being like, what can I see? So I see my computer, I see the chat going on, or what can I hear? It's really hot here in the Okanagan in BC, so I can hear my air conditioning going. If I want to tune into what I can feel my chair beneath me, and I can feel like some like the sensation of my clothing, or I can tune into what I taste. So I was drinking some orange juice earlier, I can taste that still in my body. So the more that we're back in our bodies and trying to do things that are soothing, the more that we can deal with that feeling of restlessness and being on edge. So yeah, and so Mom Hut also says, if we have people nearby who have anxiety too, and if we try to deal with their anxiety, they make it worse. Well, I don't know what you're trying to get at there, so correct me if I'm wrong, but you're having this idea that if two people are feeling really anxious, you're kind of building on each other. So that's fair. So I think what needs to happen is be able to find a space that you can feel safe and secure. So maybe it's in your home, a place in nature, or trying to be really mindful of what your individual skills are going to be for reducing anxiety and reducing fear and kind of bringing it back into the present moment. And sometimes it's okay to acknowledge that some people are more calming and soothing and validating for you than others. That's okay, because everyone has their strengths. Like you might want to be around a friend that is just really going to be more in tune with you and more validating and empathetic. So yeah, that could definitely be something as well. Sammy says that meditation really helps her or him. That sounds really great. That's a really great one as well. And I will add on to that comment of meditation as well, is that we don't meditate only when we're in panic. I'm so sorry, but we have to practice regular strategies to have it be more effective. So if you want to reduce your overall anxiety levels, like try a practice like meditation and try it on a regular, if possible, daily basis. And it doesn't have to be a long period of time. It can be a few minutes every day, just really connecting with your breath and your body. And there's tons of great apps and videos and things. You can do guided meditations, or you can do a theme of a meditation that you want to hear about, like nature or something. And that's one for all. Erin says, hi, thanks for these talks. Can you speak about waking up in a panic at night? For sure. We can definitely talk about that. Well, I occasionally experience this about an hour after I've fallen asleep, and I'm overcome with fear of death. So definitely, I think we can definitely touch on those today as well. I don't know about you, but I'll tease myself as that last night I actually had a bit of a nightmare and I woke up in a bit of a panic. It was like the topic of the nightmare, I'm not even going to say it was really silly, but it felt really real to me. And so I woke up in a panic. And so in my own knowledge of my self-care and my anxiety that I experienced, I knew that it was really important for me just to notice like my bedding, that it's really soft, and just reorient myself to the room. I knew I was in my bedroom. I'm in a safe place. I reoriented to the fact that I had my breath and made a deliberate effort to take a big, big, big chest breath and belly breath and really pull in that air and really go, you know what, like my experience of my dream wasn't really true, and like really bring back into the present moment for sure. Yeah, so I'm going to go into some of those other chats as well, but what we can do, Amit, is I'd love to maybe bring up the first tip, and then maybe some of these tips I can pull in some of the comments as well. So the first tip that I would say give to people for managing panic attacks would be is like, do not let the fear of panic attacks control you. And this is a lofty goal, and this may take you a little bit of time to conquer, or might take a long period of time. It does not matter how long it takes for you to get here, but I think this is a really valuable goal to set your sights on, because if we acknowledge the fact that panic attacks come and they do go, they do pass, they do not exist for days on end, right? And we have to acknowledge that the symptoms that are happening in our body are actually not life-threatening. Yes, our heartbeat increases, but so does our heartbeat increase when we have exercise. So we have to normalize and accept some of the symptomology of a panic attack. And it doesn't mean that we have to like the symptoms of a panic attack, but we have to create acceptance for those symptoms, because if we keep going, no, no, no against those symptoms, the anxiety is going to be like, ha ha ha, I'm going to catch you here and I'm going to make it a lot worse. So definitely do not let the fear. And also, if we're fearing a panic attack, one of the things that our nervous system and our mind does is like, if we don't like something, let's avoid it, right? Like, and let's try not to let it happen. That's a great strategy for many things in life. But unfortunately, with panic attacks, if we fear having them and we start to be a recluse, or we start to avoid or become less connected in the world, then we're going to be more likely to not engage in the things that are helpful and healthy for us in our life. Like, we need to be part of the world. We need to socialize. We need to be healthy. We need to have exercise. We need to usually work or study or have hobbies or things that really fill our cup. So we need to really ride out that attack. So sometimes it's important to even, I know it sounds cheesy, but create an image for you that you can align with, that allows you to coast through that attack. So maybe even just imagining surfing on that attack and the symptomology, and that you're moving with it, right? And you want to try and keep doing things. So you want to put your energy towards something. So it might be doing something with your hands, like squeezing your hands, or noticing something. So I always like, for example, I like to have like a grounding object. So, and this is cheesy, but this is like a glass paperweight. It's a cupcake. So I like this something that's grounding, because I can really notice the senses of it. So I can notice that it's nice and heavy. It has these little crystals on it that are like little sprinkles. So it feels like a texture. It's really grounding. It's holding me in this moment. I love dessert. I love cooking. I love baking. So it reminds me of something that I enjoy in my life. So sometimes having a grounding object can really be helpful as well. And we need to be able to know to ride out that attack, not let the fear of our panic attacks control us, and be able to still engage in our day-to-day activities as well. I do want to kind of go to some of the comments here as well. Is Sammy says, I love gratitude lists as well, for sure, because not only do we want to be reactionary in the moment of panic attack spikes, we also want to be preventative of a panic attack. So the more that we're at ease in our own body and our own day-to-day lives, the more we're going to have a lower anxiety level overall, or a lower stress level, and the less likely for panic attacks to happen, right? So if we're going day to day, I always say to people, I'm going to tease myself as usual, but I drive a car, and I can back up my car, and I do have a backup camera, but I am not the best at backing up when I am like all the way down like an alley, for example. So if I'm at the end of the alley, and at the end of the alley metaphorically is that panic attack, it's going to be really hard to like back out of that panic attack and back all the way up through backwards. So if the end of the alley is like that 10 out of 10 intense panic attack experience, I always ask people, I'm like, well, when you first turn into the alleyway and you're going along, it's like a 1, 2, 3 intensity of anxiety, 4, 5. I'm like, what are we doing preventatively to ensure that we don't get to that 10 out of 10 in panic attack? What are the things that we need to do in our day-to-day lives that are well for us? So good sleep, good exercise, good diet, like you said, the journaling that someone's mentioning, as well as like the meditation, the deep breathing, gratitude lists, those sorts of things, right? A cold shower that Amit's saying for sure is a really wonderful one, because it's really cooling to the body, opposite of that hot, like sweaty, intense body experience as well. So yeah, it's more about like, don't let yourself be at the end of the alleyway. Try your best, if possible, to back out of the anxiety experience. And so really working with your own therapist, or really researching things that are working for you to be at a lower anxiety level is going to decrease the amount of panic attacks that you would have normally. So for sure. And Kate says, for me, it really helps to go to a physical space that feels expansive. I drive to places of view and feel more spacious and expansive. I like that, because I don't know about you guys, but like that panic attack is really tense and tight. So I think that visual of like opening up, seeing a nice like scenery place and nature is really lovely. And really knowing that like there's a lot of space for your experience can be quite nice. And Kate says it feels expansive and soothing just to look out over a spacious environment, and also reminds me that I'm just one person in this world and my problems will pass. Yeah. And that's, again, the acceptance of the panic attacks, the acceptance of the anxiety experience will actually help normalize it, and you won't fight it so much. And then by not fighting it, it will decrease over time. Because I always say to people, if you resist, it persists. And I know that sounds awful, because we want to resist because it's so uncomfortable, but if we resist, it persists. So we have to create normalcy and ability to accept that experience. So that would be my first tip for you guys. Thank you so much for sharing all these wonderful things. I love the community that's happening in the chat. So thank you. Number 2 would be determine your triggers for panic attacks. So I would say, for example, like a trigger is something like we literally pulls you and catapults you into that panic attack or intense anxiety experience. So for me, something that would be triggering for my anxiety is, I don't know. I've been in a car accident. So I see other people who've been like, if I were to see a car accident happen in front of me, that would trigger me into my own intense anxiety experience, because I see that happening. And so it creates that fear. So I need to be mindful that if I know about my triggers, I can be better to avoid triggers. So it doesn't mean that I'm never going to drive, but I'm going to try and drive as safe as possible, or I'm going to try and really reconceptualize the trigger. Does the trigger actually mean this bad thing is going to happen? For sure. And also another piece could be is like, we can use like a chain analysis to interpret, like going back in time to learn our triggers. Because sometimes, I don't know about you guys, but you're like, I'm in a panic attack. I don't know why, right? Sometimes we don't have the awareness. And so it's important to know like what precipitated the panic attack. So for example, the problem behavior in the chain analysis, and like, what are the links? So maybe the prompting event would be like that trigger piece that linked in your mind those associations that led into the panic attack with the consequences of the symptoms, or maybe avoidance. And the vulnerability piece would be is like, did you get your wellness needs met recently? Like, are you showing up for you in your life and what you need to be well? For sure. Carson says that their therapist suggested that they name their anxiety. Yeah, totally. I think that's really wonderful to kind of create a little bit of humor around it as well. And so name the anxiety Karen, for sure. Yeah, because I think that sometimes we need to also, that's part of the acceptance of it is and it also allows us to recognize that our anxiety is not who we are. Our anxiety is an experience we have. We do not have to completely define our worthiness or value by the fact that we have an anxiety experience or a panic attack, for sure. I'm glad that you guys also like that idea as well. You can name it whatever you want, and then you can be able to start identifying that it's a portion of your life experience, not all of who you are. Mom Hunt says, my triggers are due dates, or if I don't get appointments. For sure. Like if you feel, sounds like you're fearful of not showing up for where you need to be, or getting things done. And so if you know that about yourself, then you can look at yourself and go, how can I help myself to get things done if possible? Are there some barriers that I can break down? Can I use some other sorts of skills of scheduling? Or do I need to just maybe say no to some things in my life so that I can show up more effectively in my life without having to take on too much? Because if I'm having a due date and I'm having a hard time getting there, is it because it's just the due date's too close and I have too much going on? So maybe I need to say no. So it's a bit of a reflection and exploration of self, of what you can provide yourself to better get things done in a way that works for you. Wonderful, guys. The next thing is that we can use the acronym BRAVE. So BRAVE is an acronym I really like, and it breaks it down like this. So B is standing for body knowledge. So learn the facts about panic. So a panic attack is your body preparing to deal with danger. If you actually think about it in a really twisted way, a panic attack is actually getting you in your optimal physical state to run away from danger or to fight danger. And unfortunately, in that moment, the danger is probably not life-threatening, like an animal trying to eat you. It's probably something that's really important to you, but feels life-threatening, like a due date or our interpersonal relationship, or trying to do your best at work or school, whatever it may be. So it's important to know that those 3 F's, like the fight, flight, and freeze response, and that's what's getting activated, and those are trying to make you survive. And so it's almost, if you can give some twisted gratitude to that experience, you don't have to fear it as much, even if it is super uncomfortable in your body. And it's just it's giving you that alarm of danger as well. Realistic thinking. So we have to try not to panic about panic. So I know it seems like a bit of a grammatical weird sentence there, but panic, if you have a panic attack, then you panic about having a panic attack, guess what we're going to do? We're going to keep climbing, right? And so that goes back to the idea of acceptance around the experience and also rationalizing the experience. So remind yourself that the panic is not harmful. Your body's having a false alarm of danger. The alarm will stop ringing in time, and that also acknowledge that your experience of reality and experience of time has shifted in a panic attack. Like a moment that, if you were to actually look at a clock ticking, is going to feel a lot different when compared to actually being in a panic attack. So you have to know that, like, your distortion of time, it may feel like hours or days in that panic attack, but it might be a short period of time. And the panic is really hard, but it technically is harmless to your body and overall. So think about it like a headache. Like, it's really uncomfortable, but it's not life-threatening, right? You can cope and function during a panic attack. You can engage in strategies that are going to reduce it. Mom also says it may be to plan it in advance and organize, and saying, and no is a big one for sure. I'm glad you like those ideas. So you can really look at your life and go, like, how am I meeting my needs? How am I not meeting my needs? And how can I meet my needs more? Because unfortunately in life, nobody else is going to do that for you. Like, you have to do that for you. A therapist is going to support you in doing that, but you're still going to be the one going, I need more. And they're just going to give you that guidance on how to get there. So definitely parts of it as well. Number 3, acceptance. So we kind of talked about this a little bit, so I'll just kind of go a bit more around this as well. It's accept that once your body's alarm system has been triggered, it will take a while before it settles down. So your body can't unrelease adrenaline once you release it's a false alarm. It may take a while for your body to return to normal. So once your sympathetic nervous system gets revved up, it will take a while for the parasympathetic nervous system to settle things down, like slowing down a fast moving train. So for BRAVE, body knowledge, realistic thinking, acceptance. And the V would be for validation. So validate your experience. So panic attacks are real and very uncomfortable, but they are not deadly, and you don't have to let to stop them. But it doesn't mean that you should say, like, oh, I am less than, or my experience isn't valid because I have a panic attack. Let's honor it. Like, it is a real experience. You are still worthy if this is happening. And like, we're going to really validate that experience. And even though you may be suffering, you are also super strong. Like, think about all of these people that are joining in today and like in this experience of having panic, right? Like, you are not alone in that experience, but you are going to push through this. And the more energy and effort you put into healing the things that are going on that are creating that panic, the less the panic will happen. E is for end. So again, remind yourself that panic ends. They do not last forever. It is not your job to stop or end a panic attack. It is your job to ride the wave of panic. So surf it or dive into it, try to fight or end panic attacks, make it worse. You can handle the panic attack. So that would be the BRAVE acronym of the 3rd tip. So body knowledge, realistic thinking, acceptance, validation, and it will end. Number 4, kind of touched on this already. Healthy lifestyle. So what healthy lifestyle is will vary person to person, but there are some commonalities of good diet, good exercise, trying to get some good sleep. And I like to use the word biopsychosocial spiritual. It's a big word, but what are your biological things for healthiness? What are your psychological things that make you well, like your journaling, meditation, breathing? Like, I think often we forget to kind of do those sorts of things. Like, we're very easily acknowledge that, hey, if I'm not well, I'll go to the doctor. But sometimes there's still that stigma or lack of like effort towards doing the things that feed your mind or your intellectual stability. And then like the social piece, like, are you getting your needs met through your interpersonal relationships? Are you having a good time? Are you having fun? Like, are you connecting? Do you feel supported and validated and heard and appreciated in your relationships? And then the spiritual aspect is like, do you have that connection to the world or to beliefs or to religion or to spirituality or any sorts of things? So I did want to go back to even Lexi was saying that her panic attacks are usually existential. And also when Erin was talking about having this idea of waking up from sleep and this fear of death, in that there is this theme of existentialism and fear of death. So I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent, and hopefully this helps you guys a little bit. Existentialism means, what is the purpose of the life that we are? If you really think about it, I'm in a meat suit. I'm able to talk about things. My brain's working, like, how is this even happening right now? Like, why is the experience the way it is right now? And why are humans aware of everything? Or how come like the world works this way? Or what is my individual purpose in this world? All of that falls under the umbrella of existentialism. Another piece of existentialism is death. Why do we do things if we're just going to die? And like, that is a huge question. And it's almost an unhelpful question, because we're trying to fight something that's going to happen no matter what we do. Like, the whole fountain of youth, it does not exist that I know of, right? And it's not going to allow us to live forever. But if we think about it in a pessimistic way of why bother, then you're going to have a pessimistic attitude. It's just unfortunately how it's going to be. And it's going to come with a lot of uncomfortable emotions. So for both of you that had those panics around existentialism or waking up with panic because of bad dreams or fear of dying, I don't know you. I don't know your history. So please take this with a grain of salt. But what is going to give you purpose in this world? What is going to give you the opportunity to feel a sense of connection to your life and the life that is happening in this world on a moment by moment, day-to-day basis? I'll use my own example. So I really value helping people. Hopefully that's obvious so far. I really value helping people. I get a lot of existentialism in a positive way from helping people. I also believe that in my own belief system that we're here in the world to experience. So I like to do fun things, try new things, or really enjoy myself, enjoy some good old cupcakes or whatever it may be. Those are the things that give me value or pleasure or enjoyment or meaning in my life. And so for both of you, again, I don't know you, but I would suggest do some reflection. What could give you purpose, self-fulfillment, self-actualization for you in your own individual lives? If you can connect to that and you have a sense of who you are, a strong sense of your own identity, I think that fear of dying would lessen. Because if you think about it, if you live this is kind of morbid, but if someone young dies, right, we always go, that's so sad, that's so tragic, they didn't get to live life. But if someone who's older and elderly passes away, we have more acceptance and understanding. The difference between those is generally the person who's older would have more experiences and have lived more life to the fullest because of the time that they were allowed in this world. So what I'm trying to get at is, at the end of the day, wouldn't it be better to look back on your life as an elderly person and go, I really lived life in the way that I wanted to. I really had these great experiences that really make it wonderful. And if I'm no longer part of this world, that's okay, because I have lived this life that I really align with. So I think that's really important for you guys to maybe consider what your beliefs are and what you want to live and portray and have fulfillment within your own lives, because then the fear of death won't be as intense, right? Like, you won't fear death because you know that you've lived. And another piece of it, and if we do a little bit of a history lesson here, like over time, I don't like, just coming from a Western standpoint in my own perspective, religion has lessened its hold on society. Like, if we look at history, like the church and the state were like metaphorically in bed together, right? Like, they always had a hold on one another. And over time, it's kind of slowly in some ways kind of pulling apart. But the reason why religion and like stuff like that was so powerful is because it gave a lot of evidence or ideas as to what would happen in life, what is the meaning of life, or what happens after life, like for example heaven, right? And so I know this is a little bit of a history lesson, but sometimes we also need to have a belief system of like where our souls metaphorically, or what happens to us after we die. So I'll give some examples and maybe some of you guys will align with it. Like I personally, I believe that like they're from energy is energy. And I go with the whole thing about physics. Energy is neither you're created nor destroyed. So energy created me as a human being, and my human body will become energy in the soil again, in whatever form again, and contribute to the cycle of life. And so I believe that I will just continue my energy of myself. It just is cycling. So the things that I do have a ripple effect on people, and then I'll continue to go through that energy exchange. And so that's just my belief system. And again, it's neither right nor wrong, but that gives me a lot of peace. And so I don't fear death as much because of that calmness that comes with that thought of the energy exchange, or that I believe that my soul can be at peace somewhere, and there's no more distress and whatnot. So hopefully that answers your guys' gives you some big reflection food for thought around like the fear of dying, is that we have to kind of conquer the fear of dying and being like, well, it's not like you don't want to live, but it's like live life to the fullest and don't fear the outcome because you've lived life in the way that you really want to. So it's a bit of that for sure. Shelley says, I continue to withdraw from people as it seems to be interacting with others only brings more stress or opportunities for anxiety. Yeah, well, I think that it can be sometimes really draining to interact with people. And so I would really commend you for having that awareness that as your anxiety increases, and that your anxiety increases as you withdraw. So this is kind of an interesting coping skill that comes from dialectical behavioral therapy. It's called opposite action. It's kind of exactly what it is. Instead of withdrawing, maybe you need to engage more, and you're allowed to engage in more in ways that are good for you. So maybe going out to a really busy restaurant is just too much, but maybe having a quiet cup of tea with a friend in your own home might be a really good way to engage socially without being overwhelming, right? So you will find your balance. It's not that you have to hang with people all the time. It's just that it's interesting because we, as human beings, we're meant to have interaction and be parts of a group, right? So I think part of it also is going like, what other things do you need to manage your anxiety so that you can have the social interactions that you would like? Lexi says, super helpful thinking points. It just really is comforting to hear you explain things I've thought, feeling less alone. Definitely. Like I will definitely say that for me. Like I remember in my undergrad, I was studying psychology and sociology, and this is like a really inappropriate joke, but people are like, what are you going to do with your Bachelor of Arts? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I'm really trying hard to like study and do something. But I actually didn't really know in my undergrad that I wanted to be a clinician and a counselor and things. And so I really questioned. I was like, here I am following life's order of like going to school and like moving forward and things. And I wasn't really sure. And so I really questioned, I was like, what is the purpose of all of that? That feeling can be really lonely, but I think it's really normal to go like, every person I think has ever thought that, like, and even if you just like look at art, for example, like how many wonderful art pieces are trying to portray those questions of the world, of why we're here, or the idea of like, what is the meaning of life? Or I can't remember who it was it Michelangelo? Please don't hate on me if it's not right, but that picture of like God dangling its finger to man in the clouds, that one that's really popular. I'm not sure if that's the right one. And so even that alone was trying to portray like the connection between like the upper energy or higher power and humanity, and that separation of things. So I think that when we're in that state, it's okay to look outward and really express yourself and connect and create that sense of community. And Mom Hunt says, I get to hear the same about majoring in art. Yeah, for sure. Exactly. It's like, what are you going to do with the art degree? And like all that pressure and like that questioning of like what we're going to do with our lives and like, what's the point of it all? Or I've really have thought about it's like some days where maybe someone like I really like to help people, but some days some clients aren't doing so well. And I question my value, my worth. I'm like, what's the point of me doing this if I'm not making an impact? Or, so I think all those types of questions are really normal. So when you're feeling that, look for inspiration, look for connection, look for community. And like, that's going to be one of the best ways to challenge those ideas around existentialism, the meaning of life, the fear of death. Because if we don't fear something, we won't panic. I know that seems really simplistic, but it's a own journey to get there, but that would be ideal. For sure. Great questions, guys. Thank you. Continue, please. I love the questions. The fifth tip I have for you is to breathe and relaxation strategies. So I will give you a really quick breathing exercise. I don't know if you guys have heard this before. I'm going to try and find something I can use. Okay, here's a notebook. So this is called box breathing. So ideally you'd like this to actually be a square, this is a rectangle notebook, but box breathing basically says is that you use something to help train your body and your breath and your eyes to follow something and breathe in a pattern. So box breathing would start with, you would breathe in for like 4 or 5 seconds, whatever you feel comfortable with, and you would breathe out. Or sorry, actually I have this wrong. You breathe in for 4 seconds or 5 seconds, then you hold for a few sections, and then you would breathe out for 4 or 5 sections, and then you would hold. And so what you do is as you trace the eyes around your box, you're following in that breathe in, hold, breathe out, hold pattern. And what you are really doing is you're taming your breath, you're taming your nervous system, you're taming the ability to breathe in a more regulated state instead of that really quick fight or flight breath. So yeah, for sure. Definitely. So that would be one I would give to you as well. And another one is like, I know this seems kind of funny, but like, we don't actually think about this idea that when we breathe in, like there's literally like air and like cells and atoms and things like going into like nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide, all it's coming into our body. So if you really visualize a breath coming in, visualization is really helpful as well for breathing. And you can actually think about how it's literally going down your windpipe into your lungs, and that your, is it arteries? Yeah. Arteries away from the heart. Yes. And then your arteries take it away from your heart and give your body like the nourishing parts of air that your body needs. And it's traveling like all the way down your arm and down your leg. And like by breathing, you are nourishing your body. And so by slowly visualizing those breath, little molecules, atoms going around and up and out, you're really kind of focusing on what it's like. And sometimes it's nice to visualize your air as like your favorite color. I love green. So imagining nice green, healing air coming through my body and going around. So that could be another breathing strategy as well. The other one could be is like the hand on the stomach. So I have my hand on my stomach and one on my chest. And so what we'll notice is that when we breathe in, your chest usually breathes first, but if you breathe deeper, your stomach then moves, but if you're only doing chest breaths, those are the panic breaths, right? The anxiety breaths. So we really want to fill your whole abdomen. That's a deep breath. I pick on my clients gently, of course. I go, can you show me your deep breath? And they go like this. I'm like, that is a sigh. That is not a deep breath. The part of the reason why deep breathing is so helpful and why, you'll see like, breathe like on like a meme or something, is the reason it's so cheesy and so true is because when you take a deep breath and you let that exhale out, the long exhale is actually giving you that ability to regulate your nervous system from the sympathetic, the fight flight, into the calm parasympathetic nervous system, for sure. So that would be a really good one. So box breathing. So you go around your box, right? You also relaxation strategies around breathing, holding your hands, visualizing the air, all of those sorts of things. And I'm sorry, but please practice it before you're panicking, because it's like probably really even more stressful to try and learn a new strategy in a moment of panic. Practice these. Like if I were to do a box breathing here for a minute, like just to go around the box, like it's not going to take too long. So imagine if you just give yourself that present, that really juicy present gift of like learning how to breathe in a good way, then you're going to be able to more likely to remember it and recall it when you're in a state of panic. And that's just going to be more effective. It's like trying to ride the bike for your first time ever. You're going to fall off. But if you know how to ride a bike before and you're trying to get away from something, you're going to know how to do it because you've already ridden your bike before. So those are my weird analogies for you so far. Erin says, excellent explanation. It's true that I tend to have nighttime attacks during times when I'm not having enough meaningful experiences. So I need to realign with my values and focus on meeting my needs. Yes, thank you, Erin. That's exactly what I was trying to get at. So you shared that summarized that in a really nice way, because you're noticing that connection, that you're not having enough meaningful experiences. And so then you're panicking about the fear of death and dying because there's this lack of connection and meaningful things that you're looking for. And so when you wake up in the middle of the night, it's probably because subconsciously you're dreaming about it. So it's kind of really showing up there. So I'll give you another strategy that might be helpful as well. Ironically, I'm picking up my favorite journal. But one thing that I really like to do on an annual basis, generally around New Year's, and I don't say resolutions, I like to say intentions or goals, or, in a really positive way. But I every year like to realign with my values or what's important. So every year since I think it's been, 2015, I've been doing yearly goals in this one notebook. So I don't want to lose this. It's in my office, but I talk about like the goals I have, the values I have. And so when I'm in a moment of existentialism of like, what am I even doing? Like, where am I going in my life? I like to look back at my goals and go, wait, these are the things that are really important to me in my life. They're really meaningful. Let me aim for those or go back to them, and those kinds of things. So that would be another really great journaling kind of prompt or thing, is like to check in, make goals, things that really drive you. And I always like to pick a word that I like to kind of live by every year. And so my word for 2022 would be vitality. So it's like, being able to be really alive and present and full of life. And I also like to pick like a bit of a mantra that I have. So my mantra this year was balance, being well, but also being successful in my business and my practice. And so that was my mantra as well. So that could be another example for managing like existentialism and the fear of dying as well. Yeah. And Carson says, I pick a word for the year and aspire to achieve it. So I tend to do abstract words like odyssey and relax. I think that's really great because it kind of creates that image probably for you of how you want your year to go, or things that you really align with. And I just like want you guys to know that like I just want to give you permission, not that I'm the permission holder, but you can have the life that you want. Like, we are very lucky in Western society and like the freedoms that we have, but if you want a certain life, like you can work for it and you can have it. We have social mobility. We have the ability to be well in many shapes and forms. So if you want that, I give you permission to set your sights high and achieve the goals and create the life that you really want. Like, you guys are deserving of it. There's no reason that you don't have that opportunity to do that. So give you permission. And I always like to tell people who are not well, like, you don't always have to feel this way. It's going to get better. We're going to put time and energy into it. You're going to learn to understand yourself, right? And so that panic or the anxiety, it's going to decrease if you have a better connection with your own self, right? So that's kind of like the goal of it all, right? Yeah, so feel free to shoot me some more questions here because we have a few minutes left, but just to kind of recap some of it is that there's still 5 tips of let's see here. Do not let the fear of panic attacks control you. So that was my first tip. Determine your triggers for panic attacks. Use the acronym of BRAVE. So body knowledge, realistic thinking, acceptance, validation, knowing that it's going to end. Number 4 tip would be a healthy lifestyle, really important, and breathe, right? So like a lot of good breathing strategies, box breathing, hand on chest and stomach, visualizing the air coming in. And since you guys kind of like the personal examples, I'll share one more, is that I am a little bit of a worrier sometimes. I'm really good at worrying. I've noticed that ever since I was very fortunate enough to get a puppy this year, I've been walking almost every day, like definitely 5 to 6 times a week, which is great. And I actually just even noticed a dramatic decrease in my anxiety just from that short 15-20 minute walk every day, and it brings me a lot of joy. And it's funny because now the neighbors wave at me. So everyone's like, there's that girl with her puppy walking her dog. It's kind of fun. But even that alone changed it. And like, I already was pretty active before, but I think what was the difference in my activeness was that I'm doing it consistently at the same time, generally in the mornings, because it's really hot lately. And that's just made a huge difference in that. So again, it's like that self-exploration of like, what's going to be for what you need to help yourself. Shelley says, thank you. No, thank you. I've found that in deep breathing, I breathe in self-acceptance and breathe out anxiety. I like that. You're really mindfully kind of targeting what you're experiencing. and you focus on physically bringing in self-acceptance and breathing out anxiety, and visualizing it really helps. I really like that. That's a really great skill. So hopefully some of you like that idea, want to give it a try. Great apps for like breathing and meditation are like Calm, Insight Timer. YouTube's free. You can just go on there and go meditation or breathing exercises. There's tons on there. In like for Canada, there's anxietycanada.com has lots of wonderful resources as well for anxiety. But yeah, and like I always say to people, like, give counseling a try. Not that you have to, but like, you never know what you could learn, right? Like, you never know like what self-growth or development you may have. That could be another good thing as well. So yeah, there's totally lots of great stuff that's kind of going on in that regard. I don't think I missed any of the comments here, but I really appreciate all of you guys sharing your experiences and your tips. Like, that's so helpful and so wonderful. Yeah, but I will be here for a few more minutes. Yeah, and Shelly also says that YouTube has great chakra balancing exercises. So chakra is like that idea of like energy in your body, and so that could be a really great way to connect as well. Like, you're allowed to pick like whatever you want for your anxiety, you know, like obviously you're going to want to pick the things that work best for you, so you want to try different things out, and whatever best works for you, that's great. And you just want to make sure that they're like helpful, healthy things that you're able to do consistently. And the thing is like anxiety will come and go in life. So different seasons, I like to call it, in our lives will sometimes produce more anxiety than others. If we have an understanding as to why the season of our lives are creating more anxiety, then we'll be able to better manage it as well. So that's a good one too. Yeah. So I'll be here for a couple more minutes just to see if anyone else has any other questions, but those are kind of those main tips. And hopefully you guys can have a different relationship with panic. Like, in reality, it's an awful experience to be in a state of panic, but you can move through that as well. So definitely. I don't see any more questions, but if you guys need anything else, we will be doing some more lives, and it's so great to hear you all today. So thanks for joining, and yeah, I'll see you guys again soon.